This is Chapter 14 of Mapping the Human Mind, the Renaissance and the Rediscovery of Knowledge. On a spring morning in 1397, a breathless messenger arrived at the home of Coluccio Salutati, Chancellor of Florence. The aging statesman, surrounded by ancient manuscripts and letters from across Europe, received news that would change the course of intellectual history. Manuel Chrysoloras, a Byzantine diplomat, had agreed to teach Greek in Florence. Salutati's eyes, weakened by decades of scholarship, brightened. Greek, the language of Plato, Homer and Aristotle, had been largely lost to Western Europe for centuries, surviving only in fragments or awkward Latin translations. Now, for the first time in generations, Florentines would be able to read these ancient works in their original voice. The spark had been struck. Soon it would catch like wildfire. There was no sudden birth but an awakening from long slumber, as Europe turned its gaze both outward and inward, toward the world and its own forgotten wisdom. As the 14th century dawned, a unique convergence of circumstances prepared the soil for this cultural flourishing. The Crusades, for all their violence, had opened trade routes and exposed Europeans to advanced civilizations in the East. Italian merchant cities like Venice, Genoa and Florence grew wealthy from commerce, creating a prosperous urban class with the leisure and resources to pursue learning. And as the devastating Black Death receded, leaving perhaps a third of Europe's population dead, the survivors found themselves in a world where old certainties had crumbled, but new possibilities beckoned. It was in these vibrant Italian city-states that the Renaissance truly ignited. In Florence, wealthy cloth merchants and bankers spoke with pride of their rebirth of ancient learning. They didn't see themselves as creating something entirely new, but rather as recovering what had been lost. The intellectual and artistic achievements of Greece and Rome that had been obscured from Europe's medieval centuries. The path to this recovery was winding. Byzantine scholars fleeing from the advancing Ottoman Empire arrived in Italy with precious Greek manuscripts. From monastic libraries across Europe, ancient Latin texts emerged into the light. From Spain and Sicily came Latin translations of Arabic works, themselves often preserving and commenting on ancient Greek knowledge. But perhaps the most pivotal moment was the arrival of Chrysoloras in Florence. Before him, even accomplished scholars like Petrarch and Boccaccio had struggled with Greek, relying instead on Latin summaries and fragments. When Chrysoloras established his school of Greek studies, he opened a direct channel to texts that had been inaccessible for centuries. Students crowded his lectures, among them Leonardo Bruni, who would later translate Aristotle's Politics and Ethics directly from Greek to Latin for the first time in the medieval West. The impact of these newly accessible texts rippled across European society. In Bologna, professors at Europe's oldest university began re-examining medical practices through the lens of recovered anatomical knowledge. A young doctor named Modino de Lucci, his hands stained from ink from copying these texts, conducted the first human dissections in Europe since antiquity, confirming with his own eyes what the ancient authorities described and where they had erred. In Florence, merchants and mathematicians embraced more sophisticated numerical systems, allowing for complex calculations that transformed commerce and eventually science. With these figures, a Florentine businessman might have remarked, "Even my apprentice can calculate what was once a master's entire attention." In the universities of Paris, Oxford and Prague, scholars debated newly recovered philosophical works, challenging the intellectual frameworks that had dominated for centuries. These were confrontations between fundamentally different ways of understanding truth itself. This revival of ancient knowledge would soon gain even greater momentum, not just through scholarly effort, but through a quiet revolution in how information would travel. A transformation in the very mechanics of memory and communication just around the corner. What made the Renaissance truly revolutionary wasn't just the recovery of ancient texts, but how Europeans transformed this knowledge. They didn't simply revere these works as perfect authorities. They engaged with them critically, tested their claims, and built upon them. The spirit of critical engagement would ultimately lead beyond recovery to discovery as Europe moved from Renaissance to Revolution. On a summer afternoon in 1486, the 23-year-old scholar Giovanni Pico della Mirandola sat in his study surrounded by books in Hebrew, Greek, Arabic and Latin, evidence of his remarkable linguistic abilities. His quill moved rapidly across the page as he penned what many would later consider the manifesto of Renaissance humanism, the oration on the dignity of man. "We have made you neither of heaven nor of earth, neither mortal nor immortal," he wrote, imagining God's words to Adam, "so that you may, as the free and extraordinary shaper of yourself, fashion yourself in whatever form you prefer." The young philosopher's hands trembled slightly as he wrote these audacious words. They represented nothing less than a redefinition of humanity's place in the cosmos. This was the essence of the Renaissance Revolution, a dramatic shift in perspective. Medieval thought had placed God firmly at the centre of existence. Humans were flawed, sinful creatures, dependent on divine grace and limited by their fallen nature. The great cathedrals of the Middle Ages directed the eye upward, away from earthly concerns, towards heavenly aspirations. Even knowledge itself was primarily valued as a path to understanding God's will. Renaissance thought, while still deeply religious, placed humans at the centre, not as passive subjects of divine will, but as active creators capable of shaping their own destiny. The magnificent dome of Florence's cathedral, engineered by Filippo Brunelleschi through mathematical genius and practical innovation, still reached heavenward, but as a testament to human achievement. This wasn't a rejection of religion. Most Renaissance figures remained devoutly Christian, but rather a recalibration of its role. When the scholar Lorenzo Valla used philosophical techniques to prove that the donation of Constantine, a document supposedly granting the Pope authority over Western Europe, was a later forgery, he wasn't attacking the church itself, but demonstrating how human reason could separate truth from falsehood, even in religious matters. The turn inward. The humanist movement embodied this new worldview. In 1345, the poet Francesco Petrarch climbed Mount Ventoux in southern France, an unusual activity in an age when mountains were generally seen as obstacles rather than destinations. At the summit, he opened his pocket copy of Augustine's Confessions to a random passage. "And men go to admire the high mountains, the vast floods of the sea and huge streams of the rivers, the circumference of the ocean and the revolutions of the stars and deserts themselves." The passage struck Petrarch profoundly. Rather than interpreting it as a rebuke of worldly interests, as a medieval reader might, he saw it as an invitation to combine appreciation of the natural world with self-knowledge. This moment symbolised the humanist approach, engaging with both classical wisdom and Christian thought to develop a more complete understanding of human nature and potential. In Florence, the aging Cosimo de' Medici, his body failing but his mind still sharp, summoned the young scholar Marsilio Ficino. "Translate Plato before I die," he reportedly commanded, providing Ficino with manuscripts, a villa for his work and financial support. This wasn't just patronage, it was investment in a new intellectual foundation. When Ficino's translations circulated among Florentine intellectuals, they encountered ideas about beauty, love, and human capacity that complemented rather than contradicted Christian thought. Even attitudes towards death transformed. In the plague years, art had been dominated by memento mori imagery, skulls, decaying bodies, and the dance of death, all emphasising mortality's inevitability. But in 1464, when Cosimo de' Medici lay dying, surrounded by scholars and artists he had supported, he approached death differently. "Read to me from Plato's dialogue on the soul's immortality," he requested. His concern wasn't just with divine judgment, but how he would be remembered. his legacy through works, buildings, and ideas. The human body itself underwent a remarkable rehabilitation. Medieval ascetics had often viewed the body as a source of temptation to be controlled through fasting, flagellation, and denial. By contrast, when Leonardo da Vinci secretly conducted human dissections by candlelight, sketching muscles, organs, and veins with unprecedented accuracy, he approached the body with reverence. "The noblest pleasure," he wrote in his notebook, "is the joy of understanding." For Leonardo, studying human anatomy wasn't sinful curiosity, but appreciation of divine craftsmanship. This reverence for the human form found its most powerful expression in 1504, when Michelangelo's colossal David was unveiled in Florence. The sculptor had spent 3 years transforming an abandoned block of marble into a representation of human perfection. Citizens gasped at the 17-foot figure, its muscles tensed in the moment before confronting Goliath. This was an embodiment of human potential, courage, and beauty. It was Florence itself, a small republic facing powerful enemies through intellect and resolve rather than brute force. Michelangelo's David stood not only as a symbol of Florence's resilience, but also as a testament to the era's growing belief in the power of the human spirit. It was a physical embodiment of the Renaissance's reverence for the human form, an artistic declaration that would resonate deeply in the transformation of sacred spaces across Italy. As the city of Florence had already shown, art was no longer just a tool for decoration or piety, but a powerful medium for shaping and expressing ideas. This shift would be most clearly seen in Michelangelo's next monumental project, the Sistine Chapel, where art would transcend mere visual representation and become a profound statement of human consciousness, an expression of spiritual and intellectual awakening that would forever change the landscape of sacred art. Art is consciousness made visible. The morning light filtered through the high windows of Michelangelo's makeshift scaffold beneath the Sistine Chapel ceiling. His back ached from weeks of painting overhead, his beard and face speckled with dried paint. The Pope's impatience grew daily, but Michelangelo refused to be rushed. With each brushstroke, he was rendering visible a new conception of humanity's relationship with the divine. In the central panel, as his brush traced the reaching finger of Adam extending towards his creator, Michelangelo was capturing something revolutionary. The nearly equal stature of man and God, separated by the smallest gap, charged with the electricity of potential. According to legend, Pope Julius once shouted up, "When will it be finished?" To which Michelangelo reportedly replied, "When it is done." The artist's defiance was itself a testament to the Renaissance transformation. The medieval craftsman had been replaced by the individual genius who claimed the right to create on his own terms. Below, the papal court might still debate theological minutiae, but above them, on the ceiling, Michelangelo was painting a new vision of humanity, powerful, dignified, and capable of greatness. This vision had been developing for generations. A century earlier, in a small chapel in Padua, visitors had gasped at Giotto's frescoes depicting Christ's life. Unlike the flat, emotionless figures that had dominated religious art for centuries, Giotto's characters wept real tears, embraced with genuine tenderness, and betrayed with recognisable shame. By giving sacred figures human emotions, Giotto had declared that the earthly experience, with all its joys and sorrows, deserved serious artistic attention. The philosophical implications of this shift were profound. If human emotions were worthy of representation in sacred spaces, then perhaps the human experience itself carried spiritual significance. This idea would echo through the workshops of Florence, where artists didn't simply illustrate religious stories, but interpreted them through the lens of human experience. As these ideas rippled through workshops and courts across Italy, they culminated in perhaps the most perfect expression of Renaissance consciousness: Raphael's School of Athens. Commissioned for the Pope's private library in 1509, this fresco didn't depict saints or biblical scenes, but philosophers and scientists engaged in eternal conversation. At its centre stood Plato and Aristotle, one pointing upward towards ideal forms and the other gesturing outwards towards the material world, not in opposition but in complementary dialogue. Most revolutionary was Raphael's decision to give these ancient pagan thinkers the faces of his contemporaries. Plato bears the features of Leonardo da Vinci, while other Greek figures resemble Bramante, Michelangelo and Raphael himself. By placing these intellectuals in an architectural setting resembling the newly designed St. Peter's Basilica, Raphael visually declared the compatibility of classical wisdom and Christian faith, a harmony between ancient knowledge and modern belief. When the aging Pope Julius II first viewed Raphael's completed work, he reportedly stood silent for several minutes before saying simply, "They speak to us still." In that moment, the Pope, a warrior who had led armies and ruled territories, acknowledged the power of art to transcend time, to make concrete the abstract revolutions in human consciousness. Back in the Sistine Chapel, as Michelangelo applied the final touches to his ceiling, he knew he was participating in something larger than himself. The Renaissance had transformed not just how artists painted, but what they believed worth painting. The human form, human emotions, human potential, these had moved from the margins to the centre of artistic concern. As Michelangelo descended from his scaffold for the final time in 1512, looking up at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, he could not have known how his monumental achievement would ripple through centuries of art and philosophy. What he did understand, however, was the profound shift he had helped to create. Art had transcended its traditional role of decoration or religious instruction. It had become a mirror, a vehicle for humanity to see itself not just as humble before God, but as extraordinary in its own right. This was a turning point, but it was not an isolated one. Across the peninsula, another revolutionary mind was working in parallel. New perspectives on reality. Meanwhile, in the quiet of his study, Leonardo da Vinci, surrounded by dissected flowers, mechanical sketches and anatomical drawings, was redefining the boundaries of human potential. For him, science and art were inseparable, flowing together seamlessly into a web of observation and creation. While Michelangelo sought to elevate the human form through divine inspiration, Leonardo pursued a deeper, almost scientific understanding of it. His work not only represented the body, it was an exploration of the very essence of life and nature, offering new perspectives on both reality and human potential. This scientific approach to art had begun decades earlier with pioneers like Filippo Brunelleschi, whose revolutionary work with perspective transformed how artists perceived reality. In 1413, Brunelleschi conducted a famous demonstration in Florence's main square, using a small hole and a mirror to show how his painting of the baptistry matched the building's proportions exactly. This was more than a technical feat, it marked a fundamental shift in consciousness. Where medieval thought had treated the visible world as symbolic of higher truths, Brunelleschi's method revealed that reality itself could be mapped, measured, and understood through mathematics. Leonardo took these principles of perspective and observation to unprecedented heights. In his studio, he studied how light played across curved surfaces, how distant mountains faded into blue through atmospheric perspective, and how the slightest muscle movement shaped expression. These weren't just artistic flourishes, they were acts of inquiry, turning painting into research. The power of Leonardo's approach became evident in stories told of visitors to his Milan workshop in the 1490s. One tale recalls French Cardinal Georges d'Ambrose standing transfixed before a portrait of a Florentine merchant's wife. "She seems to breathe," he reportedly exclaimed, referring to what we now know as the Mona Lisa. Leonardo, always focused on the animating force behind the human face, is said to have replied, "That is precisely what I sought to capture, not just her appearance, but her living essence." This lifelong inquiry filled Leonardo's notebooks with mirror writing and detailed observations of everything from bird flight to human anatomy, showing a relentless pursuit of the hidden logic behind nature. When he sketched his famous Vitruvian Man in 1490, placing the human body with a perfect circle and square, he wasn't simply drawing anatomy, he was illustrating a cosmic principle, that a human being reflected the order of the universe itself. "The painter who draws merely by practice and by eye without reason," he wrote, "is like a mirror that copies everything placed in front of it without understanding its existence." For Leonardo, true art demanded comprehension, an effort not just to depict what was seen, but to reveal the principles beneath it. The Renaissance's most profound achievement lay in this integration of ancient knowledge with contemporary experience, creating a vision of humanity that embraced both intellectual and spiritual dimensions. As Leonardo put it, painting is a subtle invention with which the philosophical and subtle speculation considers the nature of all forms. Truly this is science, the legitimate daughter of nature, because painting is born of nature. Through the greatest artists, the Renaissance made visible a new consciousness, one that would continue to evolve, challenge and inspire long after the paint had dried. Leonardo's vision, blending nature's laws with human creativity, embodied the Renaissance's spirit at its highest. But this flourishing of genius didn't happen in a vacuum. Behind the studios and studies, a quieter, fiercer world churned, of merchants vying for prestige, of rulers commissioning masterpieces to glorify themselves, and of power disguised as patronage. Understanding the Renaissance fully means seeing not just the brilliance of its artists, but the machinery that lifted and sometimes constrained them. A new world of wealth, ambition, and influence was shaping human destiny as surely as any brushstroke or invention. Next week, Chapter 15, Patrons of the Renaissance. Power, Politics, and Progress. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Narrative.